Hi, what's up, guys? Today we're just going to do a quick video on resumes. Now is a good time to pull out and dust off that resume that you've maybe had sitting around since the last time you applied. So today we've got 5 tips that you can do today to make sure that you're ready when that perfect job comes up and you want to apply to that. So the first thing that I always suggest is if you do have an older resume, perhaps you've used and you modify over time, every time you update that, I would go and start from scratch. That's the first thing. Formatting is a big issue when we see different fonts, different bullet points. It just throws everybody's eyes off. When we send a resume, it's 10 seconds of attention that you have. So if you have those kinds of things that are standing out to somebody, they're probably going to pass on that pretty quickly. The second that I would do with that in that same area would be to not get fancy. We don't need people's pictures and things on their resume. It just needs to be about the history. I do have a resume up here that we will quickly breeze through with just a couple of hints on this one. Overall, not bad, but could definitely be a little bit better. The second thing that I would do, I see it all the time, is listing that objective. What your objective is in attaining this role. That's a big waste of real estate if that's what we're going to do on there. Your objective doesn't really matter to the hiring manager. They want to know what you're going to do for them. So get rid of that objective. I would actually turn that around and make that a very succinct area that I could use for a summary of myself, of my skills, of my achievements to make them want to read further. The third that I would be doing is, again, going through each individual in chronological. Again, guys, don't start with the oldest job at the beginning. Let's start with the freshest job at the top. And when we're writing down the role, what I see most often is we list what we were supposedly in charge of, what the role actually consisted of. Again, everybody knows, let's say, as we have right here, a used car manager. Everybody in the automotive industry knows what a used car manager is responsible for. Let's not waste that real estate on listing those things unless it's completely out there and maybe something that isn't typical. But I would use and list my achievements in this area. So if we've increased volume, if we've increased gross profits, days in inventory, anything that's going to look good. And obviously these need to be verifiable. Don't just list things. But if you've achieved something, that's what we want to see there within that. If you were a top performer within your 20 group, anything like that that adds value to it. The fourth thing that I would do today is make sure that my name and contact details are very, very prominent on my resume. So I'd have that bold, I'd have it centered, and at the top, I would have my phone number. I would take out my address for multiple reasons, but especially with the fact that if we're talking about a geographical area and there's maybe inclement weather in the winter and it's a 45-minute drive and that particular dealer may have a feeling around somebody commuting, I would take that off there just to alleviate that. The point of your resume is to get your foot in the door and get an interview and then sell yourself once you're there. So if we've put up the objection of living too far away before we get in the door, how do we handle that if we're not getting that phone call to do an interview? And the fifth and very important tip I have is have it reviewed. The amount of times that I have seen a manger pop up on resumes, it's not a spelling error, so it doesn't get caught. hopefully a second set of eyes may do that for you. Again, if we're going to write something like attention to detail, and then down below we write that we are a sales manager, we're probably not getting that interview that way as well. So if we look at the resume here, again, I know we've blacked it out, but we have an address. The phone number is very much not prominent. Again, I would center this and make it a focal point. The name here, again, is blacked out, but it is bold and it is much larger than the rest of the fonts in this resume. We have an email address, not very prominent, but okay. And on emails, make sure that they are appropriate. We have seen some questionable ones. Really, if you can get if you have an email address and it's not your name, I would go get one that has your name in it. So Gmail, Hotmail, wherever it is, those don't matter, but definitely go get one that has your name in it. It's much easier for the person to understand, and we don't have any offensive emails. On here, we have this person's, again, it's blacked out, but we have their Twitter account, which is interesting. We don't see this very often. I would rather see a LinkedIn account, which on this one we do not. But Twitter, I did happen to go and check this person's Twitter account. Very much irrelevant to the automotive industry. But what I do find on Twitter, we see politics and other things creep in. Again, we don't want a hiring manager going and looking at what your potential political preferences are, and then maybe not picking up the phone based on those things. So if you have a Twitter account, great. If it's all automotive focused and you've built a following, this particular person doesn't post very often, so it's just not worth having on there. Get your LinkedIn account on there because that's your professional network. Hopefully you're being professional on that network and people can see how engaged you are. If you're not engaged on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you might be, don't put it on there and use that real estate for something better. So that's the big one here. Again, if we go through this resume a little deeper, and we do have an overview. This particular individual has put up the number of years of experience. I would take out the number of years of experience and personal preference here, only because we start to potentially look like we might be getting towards a retirement age. Not that this individual is, but you're putting up the objection before you get there. Again, lots of years of experience, fantastic. But again, I would summarize what I've achieved in the automotive industry here instead of listing 24 years of experience. Just being somewhere doesn't really give you the experience that we are looking for in the next role. When we do scroll down, and sorry, I'm going slow on the scroll just so that we can keep it blacked out and keep this confidential. We do have a couple of good accomplishments. So they've created a process map and streamlined the reconditioning process to 48 hours. Obviously, that's really important in terms of getting the turnaround in vehicles. You can't sell it if it's not on the lot. Raised gross profit from $1,500 to over $2,100. Now, this is creating me to want to know, how did we get that extra $600 in gross profit? And it was achieved in only 60 days. And then they maintain that as well. So I do want to meet this person and understand how they raise their gross profit $600, because obviously if I'm hiring for my dealership, that's going to be a benefit for me. Increased Viato calculated turns from 6 to over 11 in 90 days. Again, I may want to know more about that and how that they were able to achieve these things. The other thing that I'm seeing consistent, we have some good amount of time spent in each role. So this individual as a general sales manager from 2011 to 2016. I would like to see the months typically here, just because then we're seeing if there's any gaps. But when we do get to a longer term employment, months don't matter quite as much because we're typically not covering things up. And we can see it's pretty consistent, 2008 to 2011, and then even current is 2016 to present. So a very good amount of time in the role. This person isn't changing constantly. And for the people that are career hunting, one thing with this one, I do see that they were a used car manager, then they went to the GSM role and then back to used car. So that does create a little bit of a question for me. Why take the step up and then take the step back? Not saying it's completely bad, but I do want to know what the story is. And then down to the bottom, we have education. Again, throughout every role there, sorry, just going back one moment, they do continue to see performance in each role that they're taking. I would like a little more meat on that bone, a little more substance to it for sure. So we have ended it with the education. We don't have years in here other than the class of 96. So I'm assuming that this individual did actually complete the CAI program back in 96. So the 3-year diploma. I may want to have that actually listed out a little more because I do see often in this industry somebody who has gone and done their OMVIC through Georgian College, and then they write that they went to Georgian College. I might want to stand out a little bit from that, especially as a product of the CAI myself. Now on the formatting, here's where we see this. This is a 2-page resume, which is fantastic. The second page is empty. So format that, make sure that this resume comes through as a single page. If we have limited it to that, since we do have 2 pages and 2 pages is more than acceptable, again, I would put a little more meat on that bone so that somebody wants to meet you and see what those accomplishments were and how that may benefit my dealership. I hope this helps. Again, that's 5 quick tips that you can do today. Number 1 being start from scratch. The number 2, remove objectives, and one more on that one would be in that same realm would be references upon request. If I want your references, I will get them before I hire you, right? So let's just take those words out of there. Use a summary instead. So list the verifiable achievements, name and contact details that stand out on the resume so that we know how to get in touch with you, and then have a friend, a spouse, even kids are pretty good at being able to pick up on their parents' spelling mistakes. So use those people within your network to have it reviewed and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. I hope this helps, guys. If you have any questions, please reach out to anybody on the team here at Auto Careers Group, and we look forward to speaking to you. Thanks.